Number 1.
In the summer of 1979, a 14-year-old girl asked her sister to tell their mother she would be home later. 41 years have passed, and Suzanne has not been seen since, and no one knows what happened to her. That's about the extent of what we know. And as with all these cold cases, what we don't know is as telling as what we do know. Attitudes have changed in the 41 years since Suzanne vanished in Harold Hill, Essex. 14 is a funny age. Many of us remember it as being on the cusp in a way. It's when you really start to say goodbye to your disappearing childhood and make the first tentative steps towards womanhood. But you're not there yet. You're very much a child, even if you don't feel or look it. From the limited information online, it seems Suzanne didn't think she was a child, and nor did those around her. A 2018 appeal from the Romford Reporter states that Suzanne and her sister Michelle vanished in late July 1979, stating they were going to stay with a friend in Dagenham. Michelle returned home over a week later, stating that they had stayed in Islington. Suzanne was apparently meant to come home that night, but didn't. A sentence at the end asked for those who knew Suzanne to get in touch. From the absence of anything else, we deduce no one did. A newspaper report from the time tells us the sister Suzanne went to stay with the friend was 13 years old. Michelle could not remember where they stayed or the surname of the girl they stayed with. So two girls in their early teens vanished before Suzanne disappeared for good, swallowed into a house with people they didn't know well in the capital city of England for over a week. It was a different time, and it's important not to apply the standards of 2021 to 1979. Suzanne's mother's anguish is clear, but she tells the paper she likes wearing makeup and looks a lot older than she actually is. And so Suzanne, with nothing more distinguishing offered to those who might see her than white female with brown hair, disappears, never to be seen again. So what happened to her? She's been linked to Robert Black due to a bracelet found at Black's flat. It's a tenuous link as far as I can see, no one has stated definitively the bracelet was Suzanne's. It undoubtedly was a trophy from a victim, but whether that was Suzanne or not is inconclusive. Given the lack of information about Suzanne's disappearance, it seems unlikely to me that 40 years on, people would remember a bracelet. More significantly, Black targeted prepubescent girls and girls who looked prepubescent. Suzanne was probably on the cusp of starting her 4th year in senior school and was fast approaching womanhood. Peter Tobin is the other possibility. He's been investigated, but I'm not sure if there's a definitive link established between Tobin and Suzanne. More likely, to me, is that Suzanne was already leading a bit of a troubled life. Like a lot of girls struggling, she was seeking an adult life, one where childhood, which is controlled, and people tell you what to do, isn't somewhere safe. She was wanting to cross the line to adulthood, disappearing for days at a time to London, to a place she didn't know well with someone she didn't know well, for a week. Suzanne was easy prey. I don't know if the mystery of what happened to her will ever be solved.
Number 2.
On February 3, 1983, an unidentified man broke into the Owens family's apartment in the middle of night. He entered through a window while Ora Owens and her 3 sons slept. The intruder attacked and beat Ora, an assault during which Mitchell awoke. When he entered his mother's room, she yelled for him to run away. The attacker then attempted to strangle Ora with a telephone cord, leaving her for dead once she was unconscious. The Owens neighbors discovered Ora the next day. She was taken to hospital, where she steadily regained consciousness. It was then she learned Mitchell was missing from the apartment. She spent 2 weeks in hospital recovering from her injuries. According to Ora, it took the authorities 3 days to begin searching for her son. When they first learned of Mitchell's disappearance, they listed him as a runaway juvenile and refused to take action, despite the fact he was just 4 years old. Unfortunately, Ora was only able to catch a brief glimpse of her attacker. He has never been identified, but she believes he may have been someone she met at the enlisted men's club at Moffett Field Naval Air Station in Mountain View, California. He'd offered to buy her a drink, but she declined and went home. She thinks he may have followed her home and driven away when she reached her front door. According to Ora, he was approximately 25 years old and stood at 6'3", with brown hair, a mustache, blue eyes and tattoos on his arms. Another suspect is an unidentified man who knocked on the Owens door just a few hours before the attack. He was in uniform, identified himself as a police officer, and asked about a report she'd filed about a stolen purse the previous month. However, the Menlo Park Police Department has no record of an officer stopping by the apartment on that date. In the years following Mitchell's disappearance, Ora received telephone calls from an unidentified male who repeatedly threatened to abduct her other two sons. It's currently unknown if the calls are related to the case. Ora has criticized the police investigation, stating police didn't look enough into the case because Mitchell is African American and from a poor family. She's even gone so far as to allege that one investigator told her she had one less mouth to feed with Mitchell missing. Recently, the authorities have stated they hope to use new forensic technology to solve the case, as Mitchell's DNA is available for comparison. Mitchell Dean Owens was abducted from his family's apartment in Menlo Park, San Mateo County, California on February 3, 1983. He was 4 years old when he went missing, and what he was last seen wearing is currently unknown. At the time of the disappearance, he stood at 303 and weighed 40 pounds. He has black hair, brown eyes and a lazy right eyelid. He has a scar on the upper portion of his nose and a surgical scar on the area of his left rib. He may be using the first name Michael, and some agencies state his middle name is Deshawn or Deshawn. Currently, the case is classified as a non-family abduction. If alive, he would be 42 years old. Those with information are asked to contact the Menlo Park Police Department at either 650-858-3308, 650-330-6300, or 650-858-3300. Tips can also be called into the Department of Public Safety at 617-754-3208 or 617-754-3209.
Number 3.
7-year-old Daniel Entwistle disappeared from near his home at Copperfield Avenue, Great Yarmouth on Saturday, 3 May 2003, a May bank holiday weekend. His parents Paula and David became concerned later that evening when he failed to return for tea and started to look for him, enlisting the assistance of friends and neighbors. The local community rallied round and soon a major investigation was underway with police seeking help from numerous agencies specializing in search and rescue techniques. Daniel was identified on the CCTV at Blanco's, a local convenience store nearby to his home at around 5:05 p.m. that day. There were other potential sightings of him during that day, including being with a group of other boys seen playing near to the river at Trinity Quay at around 3:30 p.m. His little red BMX bike was found abandoned near to the river close to Trinity Quay in the early hours of the next morning, and sonar examinations of the riverbed soon formed a major part of the inquiry. Daniel was described as being 3'2" tall, of thin build with light brown cropped short hair. He had a pale complexion and a strong northern accent. Daniel was last seen wearing a blue Adidas t-shirt with striped sleeves and an Adidas motif on the chest, blue tracksuit bottoms and gray-colored training shoes. Despite the huge police search involving many people and other agencies, no trace of Daniel was ever found. Since Daniel's disappearance, officers have conducted more than 2,500 lines of inquiry and taken more than 580 statements. In the last 6 years, officers have conducted further searches in Great Yarmouth and received several new pieces of information which have all been investigated. However, Daniel remains a missing person to this day. Officers continue to appeal for new information which could help solve this case.
Number 4.
When Diana hadn't returned home after a specific time, her parents, Jane and Marvin Braungardt, drove to the Venture store. They found her car in the parking lot, but no sign of Diana anywhere. The worried parents began calling Diana's friends in the middle of the night. None of them had seen her. When morning came, the parents filed a missing person report with the local police department. Police went to Venture and searched the parking lot for evidence. They found nothing, not even any of Diana's personal belongings, such as her purse. Before her disappearance, Diana got into a fight with her parents and stayed overnight at a friend's house. However, Police said she told her parents where she was. They do not think Diana left on her own and believe that she would have phoned her parents if she were able. Since Diana's abduction, police have amassed 11 binders and 3 boxes of paperwork related to her disappearance. Some of Diana's co-workers noted that the last customer Diana had waited on before she left for the evening had appeared to linger around after he was finished checking out. They had assumed he was simply waiting for another customer who was still in the mall, but now wondered if he might have had something to do with Diana's disappearance. They described the customer as a white man who was 5 feet 10 inches tall, between 35 and 40 years old, clean-shaven with dark hair. He had a fairly dark complexion and had small bumps on his face. The description they gave was very similar to the description given by the woman who had stopped to change her baby's diaper. Detectives released a sketch of the man and asked the public for help locating him. They said that he was not considered a suspect, but since he finished his shopping around the same time that Diana left the store, they hoped he might have witnessed something. Although they received a number of calls about the man, he remained unidentified. A few days after Diana's disappearance, police received a call from a woman who had been driving on Interstate 55, located to the south of Festus, that Wednesday night. She told them she observed a young woman matching the missing girl's description standing up against a bridge rail on the highway. Police were unable to confirm the sighting. Months went by, and both law enforcement and Diana's family were frustrated by the lack of progress on the case. Police had made numerous public appeals for information, but Diana seemed to vanish into thin air. They had been unsuccessful in identifying her last customer of the night, and no one else came forward to report seeing her after she left the store. While detectives still believed that they were dealing with a case of foul play, the fact that they had been unable to locate Diana's body gave her family some hope that she might still be alive. Detectives heard many rumors about what might have happened to Diana, but few facts. Many tipsters called in claiming to have knowledge about the case, but when investigators followed up with them, their information would turn out to be third or fourth hand. They would then try to track down the origin of the claim, only to find out it was simply a rumor started by someone with no involvement in the case. During the first 2 years of the investigation, they followed up on hundreds of these false leads, never finding any solid evidence about what had happened to Diana. As time went by, Diana's family began to accept the fact that she was most likely not alive. They knew she hadn't run away. She had less than $20 with her when she vanished, and no access to credit cards. Her bank account remained untouched, and her social security number was never used. Still, they clung to the hope that she might have been held against her will and was now suffering from memory loss, and they continued to hang up missing person posters and hand out flyers. Whenever they traveled anywhere, they made sure to bring missing posters with them, carefully hanging them up in case Diana had made her way across the country. The family held a prayer vigil for Diana on the 5th anniversary of her disappearance, and her mother told reporters that time had done nothing to ease the pain of her loss. The fact that there had never been any real leads in the case made it even more difficult to bear, as Diana's loved ones had no idea what might have happened to her. They could accept the fact that she was dead, but they still wanted to know how it had happened and where her body was located. More than anything, they just wanted to be able to bring her home. It took Jane more than a decade before she was able to finally go through Diana's belongings and give away some of her clothing. She hung onto a few items that she couldn't bear to part with, but admitted that she found it hard to look at Diana's things. It was painful for her to look at pictures of her daughter and think of all that could have been. Law enforcement decided to take another look at Diana's case in 2004. Although they hadn't received any new leads in years, they thought taking a fresh look at the case might reveal something that was missed during the initial investigation. They were certain that Diana hadn't left voluntarily and that there was someone in the community who knew exactly what had happened to her. All the detectives who had worked on the case desperately wanted to be able to give Marvin and Jane some answers, and they were grateful to know that their daughter hadn't been forgotten. Despite the new push to solve the case, detectives received few leads and the investigation soon stalled once again. They had nearly a dozen boxes of paperwork from interviews they had done, tips that were called in, and searches that had been conducted. In 2007, the police interviewed a local man whose appearance matched the description of someone seen talking with Diana in the parking lot before she disappeared. A woman spotted them when she pulled onto the store's parking lot to change her baby's diaper, Prano said. Thorson, 2012. He hasn't given us a reason to clear him, Prano said. The man was never arrested or charged. He's in prison on an unrelated conviction. It is believed that this man went through her checkout lane in Venture. Diana was well liked by many people, and her disappearance shocked the community. She has never been found. Her parents are now in their 70s and early 80s and have given up hope she will be found alive. If you have any information about Diana, please contact the Crystal City Police Department at 314 937 4601.